So welcome to the Agile Coaching Exchange. Ben and I are very pleased to see so many of you here this evening. So it's great that you've made the time. We're very pleased to welcome Roman joining us tonight. And I was paused there because I was thinking, well, how many times has Roman come and spoke to us at the Agile Exchange? He is a firm favourite and he's absolutely our go-to guy when it comes to products. When I'm working with new teams and I think, oh, I need a canvas or I want this, that, or another, or a great video, it's 9 times out of 10, it's Roman's website that I click onto because I can pretty much find absolutely anything there. So for me, Roman is a bit of a legend in the product world, always striving to learn new things, working with leaders, helping to evolve organizations, not just thinking at team level, thinking about strategy and how we can embed some of these great practices. He's a coach, he's a trainer, he's an author. You just need to add a few more things to this, Roman, because there's not, you could do with more here. But he's an author, he's a coach, he's a trainer, and absolutely a great guy. And so it's an honor to have him here tonight talking to us about product strategy and what are product teams. So I'm going to hand over to you, Roman. Don't let us down.
Yeah, thank you, Helen. Thank you for the kind introduction. It's lovely to be here, lovely to be back. So I've prepared a few slides. Let me try and share my slide deck with you. So hopefully you can all see a title slide that says Strategy and Product Teams. So that's the topic I'd like to focus tonight. And I plan to speak for about 35 to 40 minutes, and then I'd be very happy to take any questions you might have. So I hope that works for you. Now, why strategy and product teams? I think strategy is one of those themes, one of those topics that recently, certainly in the product space, has been discussed quite a bit. And I think generally that's something very positive. And product teams, again, is a topic that's been around for a number of years. Many people are interested in it. But I think with both topics, there's quite a bit of ambiguity what strategy is. What do we mean when we talk about strategy, even when we are being more specific and we try and focus on product strategy? Different people have different ideas what it means, and the same is true with product teams. So what is strategy and what are product teams? That's part of what I'd like to discuss, but really I'd like to get to talking about the ownership of product strategy and the role of product teams play in that ownership, I guess. So anyway, I'd like to start off with this gentleman here. There he is, and hopefully some of you will recognize him. It's Alexander the Great, famous Greek guy. And this is actually taken from a mosaic that was created by the Romans. Apparently, it's from the house of the Faun in Pompeii. I had to look this up. And if some of you are wondering, but he looks a little bit stressed here, the good old great Alexander, it's because this is just a small fragment
Listening
from
to a meeting.
This is just a small section taken from the mosaic. It depicts a battle scene, the battle between Alexander the Great and Darius III of Persia, which apparently took place 331 BC in southern Turkey. And Alexander won that battle. Well, I guess he didn't win it. His soldiers, his troops won the battle for him, and apparently it was a decisive victory. So here we have an old Greek guy, depicted on a Roman mosaic. What does this all have to do with strategy? Well, strategy comes from the ancient Greek term strategos, apparently. And this is the third time I've said apparently. I seem to be very fond of that word today. So anyway, I don't speak any ancient Greek, but I looked this up. So it comes from the Greek term strategos, and strategos is the person in charge of an army, the general, the person who commands an army, the army commander. And interesting enough, the term strategy was confined to and exclusively used in a military context until the late 1880s. And only from then onwards, slowly, the use of the term started to spread to other areas. And initially, people talked about a political strategy. And these days, I mean, we've got strategies, there's a strategy about everything, right? There's a product strategy, there's an AI strategy, there are go-to-market strategies, there's sales strategies, marketing strategies, you name it. So we've got an abundance of strategies. And for me, that is one of the issues. So what I find in my client work, as well as when I teach my workshops, that there is an element of confusion about what strategy means, and people mix up different types of strategies. And in order to bring some clarity to this and help us understand what types of strategies are there and how are they related, oops, I'm pressing the wrong button here. There we go. I've created a little framework, a little tool called the strategy stack. So what it does is it recognizes different strategies, and it recognizes different strategic levels, you could say. So I'm certainly not the first person who uses a multi-layered system, you could say, to describe something. But again, my purpose here is, or my intention here is to call out different types of strategies and show how they relate. And you can see that right at the top, there is the business strategy. And a business strategy essentially communicates the approach an organization, a company has chosen to achieve success for the entire business. So how will the company succeed? And with any of the strategies that you see here on this picture, there is no one right way to capture those strategies. And different people have different ideas what exactly a business strategy is. I quite like Roger Martin's approach. So there are 5 key elements he suggests that we capture in a business strategy, and he writes about this in his book, Playing to Win. So the first one is, what is your aspiration? What's your vision as a business? And then where will you play? Which market segments, or product categories will you address? And then how will you win? What's your competitive advantage? What capabilities must be in place? And that would include new products or services that you have to offer, you have to create. And then finally, which management systems are required in order to essentially execute the strategy. So as I said, I find that a helpful framework to articulate and capture a business strategy. And as you can tell by that remark, I generally like to use different tools for those different types of strategy. And I'm saying this because there's some people who try and use a uniform approach and essentially use the same tool for those different types of strategies. For me personally, that's not preferred. I find that a business strategy really is distinct from a portfolio strategy and a product strategy, as well as a technology strategy. Talking about those other strategies, so the business strategy is really the foundation in my mind. And in a way, you could say there is no point coming up with other strategies if the business strategy is missing or if it's not clear. So in a way, that's really the first and most fundamental strategy that should be captured, should be articulated. And then on the next level down is the portfolio strategy. And the portfolio strategy says, how will we ensure that a group of products will be successful, that their value is maximized? And think of a group of products like Microsoft 365, formerly known as Office. So I'm using Microsoft PowerPoint here, which is part of the Microsoft 365 suite. If I was in charge of this portfolio, I think I'd like to articulate an overarching portfolio strategy. So whenever your product is part of a group of products, especially when those products interact, or when people use those products in combination, as I would do, for instance, for the Microsoft 365 tools, I find myself using PowerPoint and then switch to Word and then switch to Excel and back to PowerPoint, then it can make a lot of sense to have that overarching portfolio that creates an alignment of the individual products within your portfolio, in this case, the Microsoft suite, the 365 suite, and it harmonizes their strategies. And then on the next level down, no, sorry, I can't operate my computer today. We have there's the product strategy. And so you could say the business strategy guides the portfolio strategy, and then the portfolio strategy provides the context for making the right strategic decision for an individual product and for determining the right approach to make the product succeed. And I'll say more about product strategy on one of the next slides. So I'd like to leave it here. Yeah. And then we have on the right-hand side the technology strategy. And I'm not sure if you capture or articulate the strategy, the technology strategy explicitly in your organization, but it can be very helpful to say which technologies will be used in order to help our products and services succeed. And then the next layers moving downwards, strictly speaking, aren't about strategy, but they are then start to show how the various strategies can be implemented. And I find it generally useful to work with roadmaps, with product roadmaps. And for me, a product roadmap communicates how a product is likely to evolve. If it's a digital product, maybe over the next 12 months. And it again is informed by the previous level, the higher level, in this case, the product strategy. And an effective product roadmap should, in my mind, show how a product strategy is implemented and which specific outcomes or product goals a product should meet, should achieve. And then the technology roadmap would do the same thing for the technology strategy. And then at the bottom, we have the backlog just for completeness sake to show the detailed, you could say, decisions that we have to take, or the features, the specifics that have to be delivered, that have to be implemented in order to meet the next outcome or product goal on the roadmap. So this is one way how you can tease out different types of strategies. And again, generally, that's something I'd really recommend, so that when you talk about strategy, you're being specific and you qualify what kind of strategy it is. But also, if you use different types of strategies, and typically established businesses do need different types of strategies, that you're then clear how those strategies relate and how they inform each other. So again, the business strategy would inform the portfolio strategy, strategy would guide the product strategy, and so forth. Now, to make this a little bit more specific, I've prepared an example, and I'd like to stay with Microsoft. And largely, I guess, Microsoft 365. So why Microsoft? Well, I hope that you're vaguely at least familiar with Microsoft products, but also Microsoft is a good company to use because they've got multiple portfolios, multiple product portfolios. So we've got the 365 portfolio, and it would make sense to create a strategy for that suite. And then we have the Xbox products. So it might also make sense to create a strategy for those kind of products. And then we have a technology strategy, and Microsoft, as far as I know, is still following the AI first strategy. At least that was a technology strategy that they fairly recently announced. And then within the 365 realm, I'd create a Word strategy, so a dedicated strategy for Word, and then a roadmap for Word as a product and a Word backlog. And I do the same for the other 365 products, such as PowerPoint, Excel, and so forth. And then what's missing is the technology roadmap, the AI first roadmap, which then influences the PowerPoint and Word roadmap here on this example. So the stack itself is, fairly simple, hopefully. Hopefully you'll agree. But when you apply it and you work for a larger organization, a larger enterprise, then, the resulting tree, it can actually be fairly complex. But that's the way it is. If you have multiple portfolios, and if these portfolios are comparatively rich, have several members, several products they contain, then you'll end up with a fairly big tree. So I mentioned earlier that I'd like to take a closer look at product strategy, because I hope that, or I suspect that that's the strategy that most of you are particularly interested in, that maybe some of you are also in a position where they can formulate the product strategy. And in order to do so, I'd like to, and make it a little bit more specific, I'd like to share a specific approach, a framework with you, which some of you might know. It's called the Product Vision Board. And I don't know, that tool has been around now for quite a few years. I think I first created it in 2011, but I keep forgetting. So quite a while back. And these days, there are many, you've got a great choice in different strategy templates, what templates to use. But when I created this template, the choice wasn't quite so good, and I couldn't find a product strategy template I liked. So I thought, like, well, you know what, I'll create my own one. So if you like this template, that's brilliant. You can download it for free from my website together with a checklist that helps you apply it. If you don't like it, that's equally great. I'm not trying to sell a specific template to you, but just show you how you can articulate a strategy in what I would consider are some crucial or some critical elements of this strategy. So together with a strategy, I like to capture the overarching vision of a product. And I'm focusing here on Microsoft PowerPoint, as you can see, again, staying within the Microsoft universe or ecosystem. And the vision, and this is my take on the Microsoft PowerPoint vision and strategy. My take on this is something like excite and convince people. So generally, for me, the vision should communicate the ultimate purpose for creating a product, the positive change it should bring about, and the positive impact it creates. And so again, for me, it'd be something like excite and convince people. That's like a slogan. It's short and sweet. It's hopefully memorable and hopefully resonates with the people who work on this product. So, those are some of the criteria, some of the qualities of an effective vision that I'd be looking for. And then when it comes to the strategy, that's the strategy here on this template, on this structure is underneath the vision, and I've broken it into 4 elements. And again, these are the 4 elements I would encourage you to capture no matter which specific strategy framework or template you use. A target group, those are the users and customers. So here I thought, well, who uses Microsoft PowerPoint? Well, they're the consumers, individuals, students, and families. And then we've got businesses, we've got small, mid-sized businesses, but also large businesses. In this case, the users are typically the employees, and the customers are typically, well, the purchasing departments, I figured. So quite a diverse group of people, which has to do with the way PowerPoint is positioned, but also, I guess, it has to do with the age of the product. Microsoft originally acquired the core products, Word, PowerPoint, and Excel, as far as I know, in the early 80s. So they've been around for a few years. And then we have the needs, and the needs really communicate the reason why people would want to use the product or pay for it. What's the value of the product that the product creates for the users and customers? What problem does it solve? What benefit does it offer? What's the job it does for them? And for me, the need that I came up with is to allow the users to visualize information and deliver engaging presentations. And so when it comes to the needs, I find that sometimes people list many, many needs. And there's nothing wrong if a product addresses more than one need. But I think the point here is really to focus and to say, what is the primary reason that people interact with the product? What's the primary job it does for the users and customers? What's the main benefit? And so if you have additional benefits, then, list them, but clearly point out which the most important one is. I like to use the convention of prioritizing the needs top to bottom. And generally speaking, limit the amount of needs to 3 to 5. If you have significantly more needs, those needs aren't needs, they're features. That's a second mistake that sometimes people make, that they confuse a need and a feature. So a problem, a benefit, and a feature. So a feature is a capability of the product, something specific I can do with a product. A need is the reason that I want to do something with the product. Or another common cause why people struggle to limit the number of needs is that their target group is too big and too heterogeneous. It's too diverse. And in that case, it might be a good idea to actually create something like product variants, specific specialized versions of your product for different segments or different target groups. And then the product itself should state what product it is, the productivity app. And then I like to add 3 to 5 standout features, those things that make your product, well, stand out, stand out from competing offerings, set it apart from the competition. And I thought maybe for PowerPoint, it's something like easy creation of complex presentations, AI-generated content. There is Copilot now, which is part of PowerPoint. I'm not sure if many of you use Copilot in that context. I personally don't at this stage. And then seamless integration with other 365 products and a cohesive user experience that they offer. So that's those are the 3 standout features I came up with. And then finally, the business goals, they should communicate why it's worthwhile for the company to invest or continue to spend money on the product. So what are the outcomes that the business gets out of it? What's the positive impact the product makes on the organization? And I thought it's maybe something like Microsoft PowerPoint helps to increase the overall attractiveness of 365. And then it generates revenue through 365 subscriptions, but also OneDrive subscriptions. Excuse me. And it helps to keep users generally in the Microsoft ecosystem. Excuse me. Again. So maybe you agree with how I've captured here the strategy of Microsoft PowerPoint. Maybe you find that actually I could have chosen different things, or you would have done it differently. But again, the point is to clearly think about who are the customers and users, why would they want to use or pay for the product, what makes the product special, what makes it stand out, and what are the benefits that the product creates for the company. And clearly articulate that, make it visible. Once you've articulated your strategy, you can look at it and you can ask yourself if the strategy is valid, if it's the right strategy to move your product forward and generate value in the future. A strategy should always be forward moving. It should always help you shape and influence the future. Yeah. So anyway, that's sort of roughly the level of a product strategy that I'd be looking at, compared to, say, a higher level business strategy or portfolio strategy. Now, so far, I've focused on strategy. Where are the product teams? Well, they're coming now. So when people talk about product teams, often they think of a product manager, or in an agile context, that might be a Scrum product owner, and a few development team members, such as a UX designer, assuming we've got an agile cross-functional development team, of course, such as a UX designer, developer, or architect programmer. And I like to add a tester just to make sure that we have the critical skills all represented. And for me, that would be a small product team, or the core product team. And that's not a term I've come up with, but Steve Hines, who wrote a really, really amazing book, really thick desktop reference, product management desktop reference. It's amazing because it's like, wow, it's like so much knowledge he's compiled. So he coins that term, or at least that's where I've got it from, core product team, and I'll talk about other types of product teams shortly. So that's a core product team, and a core product team in my mind is really well suited to carry out what some people refer to as product discovery and product delivery. So making decisions about features and the user experience, and then helping implement those decisions. But we're talking about strategy. And if we would like that our product teams help make strategic product decisions, or advance, or even create a product strategy, and also take charge of the product roadmap and, of course, the product backlog, then there's an issue with this comparatively small team. In my experience, the individuals here just don't have the necessary expertise, the necessary knowledge to make the right strategic decisions. They're lacking some expertise. And so in order to give them or give the team the necessary knowledge, I like to extend it and work with an extended product team. Now, who's in that extended bigger product team? For me, it's the key stakeholders. Now, who's a key stakeholder? For me, a key stakeholder is somebody who you need in order to make the right strategic decisions for your product. And that includes who the customers and users are, the people who should benefit from the product, the needs, standout features and business goals, and whose support you need in order to make those decisions, but also to implement them. So for a commercial revenue generating product like Microsoft PowerPoint, for instance, a key stakeholder might be a marketeer, it might be a sales rep, a customer support team member, possibly somebody from finance. So you basically have to do a little bit of stakeholder analysis and figure out who are the stakeholders you should focus on. And typically that's less than a handful, or about a handful, depending again on the product and the size of the organization. And as we now have a pretty heterogeneous team with maybe some senior people there, and as we'd like to avoid that this team makes decisions by committee where the product manager, Scrum product owner tries to please everyone and broker a cheap compromise. A cheap compromise, not necessarily cheap, a weak compromise. That's what I wanted to say, a weak compromise. Yeah. Or where the most senior person think, oh, this is great. I'm the most senior guy or lady here. I'll take over. I'll make all the decisions. And then we've got the hippo effect, the highest paid person opinion decides. Neither is a good way to decide, certainly not when we want to embrace group decisions. I find it helpful to include a coach, a team coach, and that might be an experienced agile coach, scrum master, product coach, or another individual who can fulfill this role. And for me, it's important that this extended product team becomes a true team. So not just a bunch of people who just happen to, somehow work on the same product, but that this team really truly is aligned with the product and has some ownership of that product, but that people have the opportunity to get to know each other and develop mutual respect and trust. And that typically then helps with the collaboration piece and the decision-making piece. And in order to achieve that, I personally find that it's helpful to keep that team stable and form it early on. So ideally, I like to recommend forming product teams when you start with the initial product strategy discovery work, the initial market research, the initial, say, user observations, user interviews, competitor research and competitive analysis work. So, build that team early on and clearly communicate that this is not just membership is not just for a few days or a couple of weeks or so, but the idea is to be part of that team for an extended period of time. It doesn't mean that the team can't change. Of course, it will change, but I think it's important to carefully manage the fluctuation so that you don't suffer from loss of knowledge, but also, that you don't suffer from team dynamics just being reset and you start the team building process again and again and again. And then the final thing I'd like to say is that the team has to be empowered to own the product strategy. And some of you might think, but hold on a second, that's maybe a little bit awkward, isn't it? The head of product who should make the strategic product decisions should decide what the product strategy is. But for me, it's more beneficial when product teams have the opportunity to shape the strategy. Usually that means that the people who know most about the product then are in charge of the strategic decisions. It also means that people typically are more productive as they're more motivated. It's great to take holistic ownership of a product, take full ownership of a product. And second, it avoids that the head of product becomes overworked. So if I'm the head of product and I look after a group of product people, and at the same time, I look after the strategies of the various products, and I also maybe have to take care of the overarching portfolio management and portfolio strategy, that's a lot of work. That's a lot of work. So, I think sustainable pace should apply to product people as well. Product managers, Scrum product owners, as well as chief product officer, director of product management, VP of product, or whichever title the head of product has. So yes, so coach is there to help the team become a proper team, help facilitate the decision-making processes, and help people collaborate, just like what you'd be used to, or what you know from an agile development team, I guess. Oh yes, final thing I should not forget to say is that if the team members here, the extended product team members can't agree, then the Scrum product owner, product manager should be empowered to make a decision, and that avoids that the team is locked in ongoing conflict. It's very similar to what you might know from a Scrum context where, my understanding is, and I think always has been, that the decision making should be collaborative within the Scrum team, but if the Scrum team members can't agree, the product owner decides. So I think it's a similar principle here that should be adopted, not necessarily adapted. Now, some of you might be wondering, okay, this is all good and well. Hopefully, some of you will think this is all good and well. But where's the distinction to the Scrum teams? How does that relate to Scrum teams? And so here, this is what this slide is trying to cover. So here we've got the extended product team, and here we have our Scrum team. And so you can see there's an overlap. And the overlapping members of both teams are the Scrum product owner and Scrum master, and then development team representatives. Then we have additional team members, I guess these days officially referred to as developers in the Scrum team. And we've got the key stakeholders who would only be part of the extended product team. Now, from an agile-centric perspective, the beauty of this approach is that it gives stakeholders a place. Many good things you can say about a framework like Scrum. There are many things that you can criticize about it. For me personally, a criticism that I've had for a little while is that the stakeholders aren't properly integrated into the framework, and certainly there is no stakeholder role. And so by using product teams, or by using these extended product teams, it's a neat way, in my experience, to integrate the stakeholders into an agile way of working, and at the same time ensure a good collaboration. And so the idea is the extended product team takes on product strategy decisions, strategic product decisions, you could say. And then the Scrum team takes on product discovery and product delivery. And for me, Scrum has always been about discovery and delivery. I've always felt that seeing Scrum as a delivery process is a misunderstanding of what Scrum is all about. So Scrum has always been about discovering the right features, discovering the right user experience, as well as discovering the right technologies and building the thing. So discover and build, ideally in every single sprint. So having said that, we can maybe take a final look at the strategy stack and bring together the different roles that I've mentioned and the different strategies. So when it comes to product strategy, as well as product roadmap and product backlog, my recommendation is to put the extended product team in charge, so the product manager, Scrum product owner with the extended product team. And then the head of a product would typically look after the portfolio strategy. That's my experience. Even in large organizations, it's often the head of product who does that job, who does the portfolio management job, together with a portfolio team. Portfolio team is very similar to a product team, but just at a portfolio level. And if that is too much work for the head of product being a people manager and a portfolio manager, then you might have a dedicated separate portfolio manager. But again, virtually all the organizations I can remember having worked with had the head of product who was as the portfolio manager. Yeah. And then we have the CEO with the C-suite, or the executives who take care of the business strategy. By the way, this doesn't mean that only the executives should be involved in business strategy. There are more collaborative ways that you can employ, like Toyota's strategy deployment approach, for instance. The same is true with portfolio strategy. I find it helpful that the Scrum product owners, product managers contribute to the portfolio strategy, but ultimately it's up to the CEO and the executives to ensure that an effective business strategy exists. And when it comes to the technology strategy and roadmap, I'd say that's the job of the CTO with the senior architects. And I think that's all I've prepared for today. So to sum up, strategies come in different forms and shapes. So again, I'd like to encourage you to distinguish what strategy, be clear on what strategy, I've said the word too many times, what strategy you are dealing with, and use the appropriate tool to capture it. And then systematically connect business portfolio and product strategy and ensure that higher level strategies guide lower level ones. Give product teams, if you can, ownership of the strategies of their products within the constraints established by the portfolio strategy. And then finally, empower the product manager or Scrum product owner to have the final say if no agreement within the product team can be reached. So I hope that what I had to say was a little bit useful. Thank you very much for your attention. If you'd like to learn more about my thoughts on product strategy and product teams, check out my website. And if you'd like to dive deeper into product strategy, you might want to take a look at my book, Strategize. Thank you.
Brilliant. Let's give Roman a warm thank you and round of applause. Be thinking of those questions, start getting your hands up. And in the meantime, I've got a few in the chat channel for you, if that's all right, Roman.
Yeah,
So
great. Please.
This one comes from Praveen. Are Scrum Masters still relevant in today's times when teams themselves are able to take up most of the responsibilities that Scrum Masters used to play traditionally?
Yeah, interesting question. So maybe I'll go back to this image here. I think it very much depends on your understanding of a Scrum Master. And, I've seen the Scrum Master role played by people who were essentially team admins. I've seen the Scrum Master role played by people who were essentially just administering the process and would say like, and now we have another stand up, and now we have another review meeting, now we have another sprint planning meeting. If that's the case, if that's how you've experienced the Scrum Master role, and if that's your understanding of the Scrum Master role, then I'd say like you probably don't need that person, you probably don't need that role, at least not for an extended period of time. But that should really be only be a small part of what a Scrum Master really does. I mean, the Scrum Master was described as a change agent in the first Scrum book, Agile Software Development with Scrum, which came out, I think, over 20 years ago now. And so the idea is to build teams and help teams collaborate, but also to ensure that the environment a team works in is conducive and is helpful for the team to do a great job. And that includes an element of organizational development and change. To be honest, very few Scrum Masters I've experienced have done this. But again, if we look here at this picture, and I wrote down here coach. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the work of Hackman. Hackman is somebody who's Richard Hackman, I should say, somebody who worked extensively on teams, and he argues, I think in a number of books, at least in a couple of books, that it's very important to offer coaching to a team to help a team truly perform and ensure that that team is a real team. There's social cohesiveness, that it has a compelling purpose, also ensure that the right people are there, there are clear norms, and there's a supportive context. But again, team coaching would be one of those criteria he lists in order to ensure that a team is effective. So I think generally teams benefit from an element of coaching. If that is a Scrum Master, if that is someone else, maybe a people manager, a line manager who can play the role well, without people worrying if they challenge the coach, then that can be equally effective. So I think, I think I've said enough.
Brilliant. I've also got a question from Yuri. Would the same stakeholders be part of the portfolio management team?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it very much depends on the portfolio. So yes, potentially, yes, or at least some of those stakeholders. So, sometimes so you may find that you need key stakeholders and you need marketing, sales, and say customer support representatives in all your product teams if you build these extended product teams. And you then also need representatives from those groups in your portfolio team. And then typically some of those key stakeholders will be part of the portfolio team and the product team. But if you have a portfolio like Microsoft 365, where we have a very cohesive portfolio, it's a collection of productivity tools, but not only that, they're bundled. So in terms of the sales approach, Microsoft license only, as far as I'm aware, of the entire bundle. So in that case, you might find that where you need your key stakeholders is particularly on the portfolio level. And then, maybe they act more as, what Steve Hines calls associate product team members, where, they're more consultants and you pull them in on demand. But again, I would expect with a cohesive portfolio like Microsoft 365 that the portfolio strategy is fairly strong in the sense that it provides quite a detailed framework. And I think it has to ensure sufficient strategic alignment and harmonization of, the various 365 products. Not sure if that was a satisfying answer.
Okay, Vihan, you've got your hand up. Should we come to you?
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much. I did post my question in the chat as well, but I think it just got lost in the bunch of other questions that have come in. Roman, lovely presentation, and I love the way you simplify things. Could you share a few personal anecdotes of where a Scrum Master role has really come to life, especially in non-product companies, shall I say?
Oh, yes. So thank you for the feedback and thanks for the question. So I'm feeling nearly a little bit kind of lost because the focus of my work's been so much on product and product management and working with product owners and product managers and various product people for the past, I don't know, what year we're in now, nearly 15 years. That I've
Shall
kind
I
of,
give you a context? Maybe that would help.
yes,
And
please.
this is for my personal benefit, of course, but I'm sure other people on the call would benefit as well. I work for a regulator, so that's public
Mhm.
sector. Our job is not to create products to pull in users, to get new customers in. Our job is regulation, and the product's
Mhm.
job is to
Mhm.
provide tools and resources for better oversight.
Mhm.
Most of my business users, therefore, are users who are more, let's say, more involved in policy making
Mhm.
and oversight activities. Uh,
Mhm.
in such a situation, it becomes really, really tough for me as a product owner to bring them to an agreement on what a future product should look like. And a lot of time
Mhm.
is spent on, we don't need this or we don't need that. Oh, it's not a web form. We just need a tracker, but they don't understand
Mhm.
Kanban. So
Mhm.
I'm talking about really rudimentary project
Mhm.
management principles of maintaining a
Mhm.
Kanban board or such. Maybe that gives you some context. I'm sorry if I'm waffling, yeah?
No, that's cool. So that's very helpful. Thank you for sharing. So, for me, stakeholders, and even here in this on this picture, and even if you form extended product teams, key stakeholders shouldn't obsess about features, certainly not about detailed features and product functionality. That shouldn't be the main focus of stakeholders. I see stakeholders as I said, somebody from marketing, sales, and support. As individuals who inject the necessary knowledge in order to make effective strategic product decisions. And again, that's about customers, users, what specific needs should be addressed, what are some key capabilities of the product and business goals. And then the Scrum team, particularly the development teams in collaboration with the Scrum product owner, they should really decide on the detailed features. And if you use an agile Scrum-based process, and for me, that's one of it's a true benefit that Scrum provides or can provide, is that you start with just a very sketchy idea about what a new version, either a brand new product or a new version of a product, what it should look like and what it should do. And then you iterate your way towards the right product by building an initial very sketchy product increment to something that's barely demonstrable, then listening to feedback from users, maybe also some of the stakeholders. But in terms of the features and the user experience, in terms of the discovery work, as it's sometimes referred to, that should really be the decision of the Scrum team, with the Scrum product owner having the final say if no agreement can be reached. That shouldn't be the primary focus of stakeholders, and I would argue in this context also it shouldn't be the primary focus of the key stakeholders. So I think, if you find yourself in a situation like the one you described, then maybe there's a piece of, helping the stakeholders understand this is their role, but also ensuring that the product owner is sufficiently empowered to say ultimately no to the stakeholders, of course, in the right way. And I think generally speaking, it's really nice. It's really beneficial when a stakeholder has an idea or requests a feature. It shows that the individual cares. That's good. But what's not good is if product people feel they don't have a choice. They're just order takers. They must do what the stakeholders tell them. I think that's not the idea product management works. That's not the idea Scrum works. There's a reason why the product owner is called product owner. It's the individual who owns the product on behalf of the company and is empowered to make a decision. So, so maybe there's a piece of empowerment that you have to look into.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Roman.
Thank you. Over to you, Anthony.
Hi everyone. Hi Roman. Thanks for the presentation. I found it really informative, and I quite like the concept of the product canvas and how you kind of neatly capture the kind of strategy, I guess, within that canvas. You might have already answered my question earlier on because I know you talked about not using the same tools and techniques for the different strategies within the stack. But I quite like the concept of the canvas, but I'm curious to know, would you use that concept with like business strategy or the portfolio strategy, even the tech strategy? I guess I often find I'm working with organizations who are trying to come up with that product strategy without having the others in the stack, and trying to work out how I get to support them to get to that kind of top level strategy.
Yeah, sure. I think I've got a slide there. I just need to quickly make it show again, unhide it, as it's called here, and then I try and share it again with you. That should answer your question or help answer it. So let's see. Yeah, so here are some sample tools that you can use. As you can see, there are no tools for the technology strategy and roadmap because I feel that's not my specific area of speciality. So I've thought rather than saying something wrong, I'll leave that out. But I think I briefly mentioned earlier with business strategy, personally, I like Roger Martin's framework, Playing to Win, which is also quite closely aligned with generally my ideas on strategy. And then with portfolio strategy, well, to do something like a portfolio analysis, I like to use the product portfolio matrix. The innovation ambition matrix might be another tool you could use. And then I've created a canvas for portfolio strategy, which I've called the portfolio vision board. And I've also created an outcome-based portfolio roadmap, which I've called the GO product roadmap, GO portfolio roadmap, apologies. And so I've described those tools in blog articles. So, if you go to my blog, you'll find the details. And then the product strategy, we've talked about that, but the important point for me here was to make on this slide that it's not just the product vision board you need to do more. It's just one of the strategy tools. Generally, I find the product lifecycle model a very helpful tool. I find the strategy canvas that was developed in the context of the blue ocean theory very helpful to do some competitive analysis. So again, if a tool like the product vision board should only be one of the strategy tools that you use. So maybe that's helpful for you. And as I said, if you're more interested in the portfolio aspects, then maybe check out my blog.
Thank you.
Maru, over to you.
Thanks, Helen. Good to have you back too. Roman, I don't know if you touched on this, but I wonder if you have any thoughts or experience with the accounting or financial or revenue aspects of product and setting up teams, or at least a capability inside a team or around the team to help with that. Reason for this is I can give you a bit of background unless you know what you want to say. So the background, please.
Yeah, if you could share a few words.
Background is in I would say 80% of my involvement. The product teams were involved in a non-agile or hybrid, I would say, cortex surrounding them, and a lot of budget management being done around that on all levels, architecture, cloud spend, all levels, but also in terms of spend on the particular discovery, UX, design, and product work. And so I felt we never had really the tools to be able to show what we plan to do with the money and what we plan, how we show our value, how we show how much we contribute.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for asking that question. It's an interesting one because I think the first thing you may want to do is that you think about how you do the budgeting and what it's based on. I generally find it helpful to organize around products, and that's also a central idea of product teams, and in a way you could say a central idea of product management, that we say what are the value creating entities that we have in an organization. And those could be commercial revenue generating products, those could be internal assets like an internal software platform, for instance, that doesn't generate any revenue, but still maybe increases productivity, reduces time to market and development cost for those revenue generating products. And so then if that's, if you follow that approach, if you follow a product-led approach, you could say, if you organize around products, then I think the budgeting should be done on a product level, not necessarily, on an architecture level and whatnot. I'm aware that, you know, in larger organizations, you get like, you know, say a development organization, and within that development organization, you get architects, and they have to sort of say, okay, I've spent so many hours on those specific tasks and so many hours on some other tasks. But, you know, in terms of, you know, kind of coming up with something like a financial forecast, you know, I'd focus on the product, and I'd think about what is the underlying business model? How can the product be monetized, or how can the desired business benefits be generated? And then use that business model to come up with, you know, something like a business case, or another form of financial forecast. And in order, and so I think generally speaking, it's helpful for product people to have some understanding, A, of business modeling, and B, of financial forecasting, at least a basic understanding. But again, I think this is where a collaborative approach can be very useful, and it can be very useful to involve somebody, say, from the finance group, the finance department, in helping you, say, you know, do the calculations and coming up with a at least somewhat reliable forecast. Don't know if that was helpful.
No, it is helpful in so far that my question was really to have to know what touch points you've had with it. That's really what I'm interested in. We all have different points to that topic, and that's why, yeah. So I got a few pointers from you, but
Cool.
I'd love to hear more about that if you on your blog, if you ever get in touch with that again, or have discussions around that, or thoughts around that, because there is a lot that I think could be done there, and not enough tools for us at hand.
Yeah.
It's for your best interest.
Yeah. So
You can grow.
if you're interested in business modeling, you know, for me the go-to book is the book Alexander Osterwalder and Yves Pigneur wrote many years ago. You know, where they
They
introduced
give
their
you
business
food.
model
You
canvas.
sit down and
I
eat
think
it and stay happy.
it's a
Because
good
that's
book
what
to go to and read.
Yeah, business model generation. Yeah, that was one of the books with the other several strategizer books that I often rely on. Now, I mean more technical books like, you know, in the cloud management. I'm going to stop here, Helen. My last comment. In cloud management, for example, they have a discipline called FinOps that helps them automate a lot of the work that is being done as part of product delivery. And in
Right.
product marketing, they have a really nice body of work that tools set that they call RevOps, and it's more
Right.
micro-oriented. So I found those approaches very interesting, and I think people coming from delivery, we need to do a bit more work, you know.
Yeah, that might be the case. I think, you know, for the details, I'm probably the wrong person to ask. It's a little bit out of my area of expertise.